Hi friends, this is Shekhar Srinivasan and welcome to the session. In this session, we'll try to understand how to build responsive web applications using single page applications with the support of ASP.NET. Myself, Shekhar Srinivasan, Managing Director, LS Solutions Private Limited, a .NET trainer and an architect. Now let's try to understand what is SPA and why should we care for this. SPA is a place where we will try to relax and get our stress relief, right? Just kidding. Now what does SPA means? Let's try to understand. SPA is used to develop web applications that fits on a single web page, providing a fluid user experience by loading all necessary code with a single page load. Why should we care for this particular technology? The first one, reduced round tripping. In a traditional web application development, for each and every request that we are going to pass, a full postback occurs which will carry the entire information present on the client system to the server. And whenever the server completes the processing, the server will return back the complete details. And this process will always keep on repeat, and hence the client will always face lots of problem with respect to performance. So in this particular technology or methodology of developing the modern web applications, the round trips to the server can be avoided and we can just request only the data which is required for the server and to process. The other advantages are rich user experiences. These days we cannot guarantee that every user will use either a desktop or a laptop or a computer for accessing the application. If I use a tablet or a mobile phone and if the full postback occurs, the experience of the person will not be effective. So we have a requirement such that the application should be responsive. In that way, whether I access my application through a system, to a smartphone or through a tablet, the experience for the user should be rich. SPA helps in achieving this. And the reach for the SPA is it's supported by all the devices, and we can use HTML5, CSS3 also. And also SPA can utilize the capabilities of HTML5 and CSS3, the capabilities of HTML5 like offline capabilities, local storage can be completely utilized by the SPA. Now when we try to observe the traditional web application development, whenever we try to send a request, the request is passed to the server. Server processes the instructions. The result will be given as a new page instance where the page gets loaded. And in any request again happens on the page, a full postback occurs and the entire process will be repeated and the page gets reloaded again. When we take the support of Ajax, then we can just avoid it by sending the request only with the data which is required for the server to process the instructions, and once the server completes the processing, with the support of scripts we can just update only the UI which needs to be updated, which we call it as partial page update. When already we have Ajax methodology of development, what is the need of SPA is These days we have lots of new JavaScript frameworks that has been introduced so that we can just perform the things in an efficient manner. So SPA is a method or a technology which will be used for building modern web applications by loading the data which is required for the first time. Next time it will be uses the data and replaces the view as per the requirement. We can use any server-side technology, for example ASP.NET or MVC, which renders an HTML output for us. Whenever there is a request, we can take the support of entity model to the models by using ASP.NET Web APIs or WCF REST services. We can expose the data to the client as a JSON data. In order to bind the rendered HTML and JSON data, we can take the support of Knockout. So Knockout.js helps you simplify dynamic JavaScript user interfaces using the model view model, which is popularly called as MVVM design pattern. Now let's try to first understand how Knockout works in a simple way, and then later we will try to understand how to develop modern single page application with the support of Knockout and ASP.NET. Now let's try to start with the demo. I just try to open my Visual Studio.NET. I just go for a file menu, new website. I select a empty website for C# corner meet at Microsoft. I'm just selecting a ASP.NET empty website. I just click on OK. Now if you want to make your application to enable for supporting the Knockout, first we have to add the Knockout packages. In order to do this, I right click on my application. We have an option called as manage NuGet packages. Here we can search for the Knockout. It will try to find the Knockout.js files. So I just try to install the Knockout. So once I selected this and clicked on install, we can just try to observe it. The Knockout.js script file has been added. Knockout does not depend upon jQuery, but whenever you have a requirement to perform some kind of transitions or animations or any kind of DOM manipulations, then we can take the support of jQuery also. So to give a support, I try to add the jQuery also. I try to install the jQuery libraries. Now first let's try to understand how to work with the Knockout framework. To do this, let me just try to add a web form. I call it as demo 1. Let me increase the font size for the visibility. My first Knockout page. In order to support the Knockout, we need to have the knockout script. Then knockout is used for providing a MVVM design pattern for the web applications. In order to support this, let me just try to prepare some kind of code. So script type equal to text by JavaScript. I would like to have a view model. So I say where VM equal to, I try to define the view model with something like first name, for example Shekhar, last name Srinivas. Say that this is the information what I have. Now this data I would like to bind to my user interface. So this has to be attached to my bindings. To do this, I say knockout dot apply bindings. This is going to bind your view model to our application. Now once I binded this view model to the knockout framework, I would like to render this thing. To do that, what I try to do is I take a paragraph, for example first name. I take a span tag to display the data of first name. Similarly, I would like to have last name, and I would like to have a span tag for displaying the details for last name. Now in order to bind this data, we should use data bind equal to text colon the view model property. Since I wanted to bind the first name, we just specified this. Next I simply say data bind equal to text last name. Now let me just try to execute this page to understand how this is going to work. So you can just try to observe this thing. Once we have done, the result is displayed. Now say that I would like to provide a provision for the user to update the values. So what we try to do is, for example I take an HR and I just wanted to update the first name and last name. So I say first name ASP colon some text box txt user. I say run at equal to server. Similarly, I wanted to have for the last name ASP colon text box ID equal to txt password run at equal to server. Now my requirement is this view model property. I just wanted to bind it to this text box. So how do we do that? Means we try to take the data dash bind attribute and then we just mention text colon first name data bind equal to text colon last name. So let me just try to once again execute and check out what will be the result. So we can see that there is no output that has been displayed. So whenever we just try to execute this, if the elements is going to accept the input, then the data bind should not be text. Instead of that, the data bind attribute should be value. So I simply say data bind value. Now once I just specify this value, let me try to execute this. Now once I execute this, we can observe it, the first name and last name is been binded with the view model first name as well as view model last name. Now, in case if I try to do some changes to the view model data, those changes are not getting reflected. The reason is when you try to define a property like this, then my system will not understand the changes. For this, we have been introduced with a concept called as observables. Actually, when you edit one of the text boxes, it does not update the underlying view model data, because the view model properties are just plain JavaScript strings. They have no way of notifying anybody that they have got changed. So the UI stays static. That's why the Knockout has provided a concept called as observables. These are the properties that automatically will issue notifications whenever their value changes. For example, now let's try to update this lines of code. Let me just try to write something like first name. In order to say that I wanted to use a knockout observable, KO observable, I provide a default value shaker. Likewise, I say last name, KO observable, Srinivas. So once this particular property has been updated, then let me just try to execute once again to check out how this is going to work for us. I just simply update my last name as Srinivasan. I can see that this information has been updated. If I try to provide the first name, for example, Imandi Shekhar, automatically the first name has been updated. Means my observable property is trying to send some notification saying that this particular property has got changed. Now, sometimes I may require some kind of property where that property depends upon the values present in another controls. If we wanted to define such kind of properties, then we call those type as dependent observables. For example, I have already created a view model first name, last name. Now I wanted to have something called as full name, where full name is going to be a combination of first name as well as last name. I just simply say KO dependent observable. I have to provide a callback function for this, so I simply say function. Now what is the value that you wanted to return back? So I simply say return VM dot first name. I would like to provide a space, then VM dot last name. Now full name is going to be a dependent observable property which will depend on the values what we provided in the first name and last name. Now let's try to have some particular user interface for supporting this thing. To do this, I try to specify a paragraph where I call it as full name, and I would like to provide a span, and I say data bind for this is going to be text colon full name. Now let us try to execute this once again to understand how this is going to work. So we have something called as full name, which is going to depend on the property values of first name and last name of my view model. So I simply say last name, we have the full name. If I try to update the first name, for example, Imandi Shekhar Srinivasan, automatically the value gets updated here. Now, when we try to do some kind of changes like this, sometimes I may have a requirement such that I wanted to have some kind of notifications. For example, we may have some form where the user provides the data for the form. Once the data has been provided, without saving or without cancelling, the user may try to navigate from that view to the other view. At that time, I would like to provide some notification saying that you did some changes on this control, so please make some decision whether you wanted to save that or you wanted to cancel. To do that, we can take the support of subscribe. So what I try to do was, in order to subscribe a property, I simply specify my view model dot what is the property you wanted to subscribe. We simply specify the subscribe option function, and val maintains the latest val for us. So now what I try to do is, whenever there is a change that is going to happen, okay, whenever there is a change that is going to happen, then what we are going to have it. So I just simply say console.log, and I would like to provide some option. Okay, console.log, I just try to provide some particular option here. So I just simply say first name updated as the val. That's what the information I just try to specify. So let's try to execute this and check out. Sorry, something gone wrong. Okay, now we can just try to observe it. We got this thing. Now let me just try to inspect with my Firebug so that I can understand if any changes happens. Simply say all. I try to update the things. I simply provide the value called as Imandi Shekhar, and once I just specify, you can see that there is, whenever there is a change that happens, it has notified that first name updated as this thing. But you can just observe it. Once I provided the value, when I try to come back to the other thing, means when I'm out of focus from that particular control, then the subscribe is working. In case if I wanted to make this subscribe to work, if any changes happens immediately, then what we can try to do is, we can just try to update the UI part for this. So under the data bind, what I do is, the value I will get is first name, and I say value update, I just specify it as key up. Okay, I'm just going to provide a value as key up. So let's try to save this and execute, and let's see what makes the differences now. So I just try to observe something like console. I say once I type in the value, you can see that for each and every change that I'm trying to type in, automatically the subscribe is getting notified for me. So in this way we can take the support of observable. So once you have an idea of how we can able to interact with the observable property, now let's try to understand how to work with the array of objects. To do that, we have something called as observable arrays. If you wanted to detect and respond to the changes on one object, we just use observables. But if you wanted to detect and respond to the changes of collection of things, then we have to use observable arrays. This is useful in many scenarios where you are displaying or editing multiple values and need repeated sections of UI to appear or disappear as items are added or removed. But one thing we have to remember that is simply if I specify that an object as an observable array, it does not make all the object properties themselves as observable. But of course we can make the properties to be as observable if you wish. When we say an observable array, it just tracks which object it holds and notify listeners when objects are added or modified. Now let's try to start with the demo. Now let us try to add a web form. I call this as demo2. Now let me increase the font size. I put a title as understanding observable arrays of knockout. Let me just try to bring in my knockout script. Fine. So once we're done with this, let's try to add the view model, and before we add the view model, let me just try to prepare an object for maintaining the information. So I try to take a JavaScript code. In JavaScript, if we wanted to prepare an object, we take the support of a constructor where it also helps in defining the class. So my class will have now two properties. One I call it as product name, the other one is price. So this is going to return me. Okay, this is going to return me the product name. So I say p name, knockout. I make it as an observable where I try to set the initial value of the product name. Next I say price. I once again specify this as an observable which will take the initial value as price. Now say that this is going to be the object what we have prepared. Now based on this object, let me try to prepare my view model. So I just try to have a view model where I say products KO dot. I just mention an observable array. In order to define an array, I simply specify new product. I just try to pass on the values for my constructor. For example, laptop, some 4500. New product. I just specify something like camcorder, a value of, for example, 28,000. So we just have a simple thing. So once we have done with this, this is my view model where the view model is having products which is going to be of type observable array of product, and every product will have a product name as well as price. I would like to apply this binding, so I say knockout apply bindings and I pass on my view model. So we have a class called as product having two properties, product name, price, and we have an observable array of products which is going to maintain a list of product objects. Now once we have this view model, let us try to render this thing. Now, in order to render this, I would like to use a jQuery template. First, let's try to understand what difference you will find when I use a jQuery template and a knockout. In order to have a jQuery template, I go for manage NuGet packages. Under this, you can just type in jQuery template, or else you can also take the support of, we can just for the search for the jQuery templates, but since it is in the beta one, that's more, it's a very older one, we can just try to get it from the Bing. Say for example, I say bing.com, and jQuery template TMPL. So let's try to go for this thing. So we can search for the plugin, and we can just try to download this. So plugins.jquery.com and jQuery this thing. Show all downloads, and we have the downloaded file. We have the jQuery templates, which I can just try to extract to. So for example, let me put it onto my desktop. So since I just added, I can just try to get it from this thing. So I just add an existing item, and on my desktop we have something like spam. I just added. So in order to use this particular jQuery template, now what I try to do was, let me try to include the things, and jQuery template depends upon jQuery. So first I try to bring in the jQuery plugin. After that I bring in my jQuery template. Once we added the plugins which are required for us, let us try to prepare the user interface that is required for our application. So I simply say div data-bind equal to template. I just simply say products template. So what is this particular products template is? Here we are going to mention how the content has to get rendered. So I simply define a script type equal to text by HTML, and I say ID equal to products template. Then I would like to take an unordered list where I wanted to execute for each and every item. So I say each index comma product from the products. So this is going to iterate for each and every product that is available. So I have a list. I take a label, for example, product. In order to refer to that product, I simply say product.pname, and whatever the price we have, I simply specify product.price. Added at, just to understand at what particular date this has been added, I just pass on this. So this is going to be a template which will try to refer this particular thing. Now let me just try to make this as my startup form. Execute. So we have a product called as laptop, price is so and so, and it has added at so and so date and time. We just got some particular information. Then so once we have got this particular thing that's available, now let us try to update the user interface. So that I would like to add a new product. So what I try to do was I just simply go for this. Above the div I say product name, input type equal to text, data dash bind equal to value. I just mention the product name. Similarly, I just specify price, input type equal to text, and I just specify data bind equal to value, and this is going to be price. Now my requirement is I just wanted to add this, so I define a button where I say data bind equal to click add product. So whenever the user is going to click on add product, then it is going to invoke a JavaScript function called as add product, which we have to update on our view model. So let's try to go for the view model and let's try to update. And here for this particular product name text box, I just used a property called as product name, which is not even available. So let's try to update the view model for accepting the product name as well as price. And also we'll try to add a function or a behavior called as add product. To do this, I just go for this thing. Under my view model, I simply specify product name, knockout, observable. I just specify something called as a new product. Similarly, price, I say knockout, observable, and I just specify the value as 0. So these are the properties which will be binded to this text boxes. And I also have a requirement for adding this thing. So what I try to do was, within the view model, I just simply say add product function. Let's try to specify that what we can do. Now once I just have this thing, I just simply specify view model dot products dot push new product of, I have to take this dot, the property is called as product name. I guess something is going wrong. This dot price okay, we forgot a comma there. Yes. So once I just done with this, we can just observe here now. So we have a view model now updated with the property product name, price, products, add product, which is trying to add a new product. So let me just try to execute this and check out how this is going to work. Already we have two products, one is product laptop and camcorder, and it is the time. Okay, so my system time is not correct, so don't go with the timing. Let's say I just try to use something like mobile 8500, but you can understand this. I click on add product, so you can say product mobile has been added. And one thing that I can just try to observe is all these particular items are getting re-rendered. Every time I try to add some particular product, the entire products list are getting re-rendered. In in case if we have some products with thousands or millions, if the template is going to get re-rendered, it creates a whole lot of problems at the client end. As a result, what we can do is, instead of using the jQuery template each, we can take the support of knockout for each binding. The for each binding is used to duplicate a section of markup for each entry in an array and binds each copy of that markup to the corresponding array item. This is especially useful for rendering lists or tables. Assuming you array is an observable array, whenever you later add, remove or reorder array entries, the binding will efficiently update the UI to match the inserting or removing more copies of the markup and reordering the existing DOM elements without affecting any DOM elements, so that the application regenerates the things in a faster way. So let's try to understand this, how we can able to achieve this. So what I try to do now is, let me try to remove this particular things and use a new markup, what we can able to do it. So this entire script and the div, let me comment it back so that we can have it. So I just try to simply specify this time, instead of div and unordered list, I just go for a data bind equal to, I simply specify a template where the name I would like to use a products template, and for each product present within the products collection, we would like to iterate this. So we have a unordered list now, and within this particular list I have to have the values. So I need a template, so I prepare a script where the type I just mentioned as text by HTML, ID equal to products template. Then I just have a list item. I take a label. The same label will do for me. Let me copy that line just to make it simple. So I have a list item called as a product, which is going to get me the details. Now let me just try to execute this once again and let me check out, is there any difference between your knockout binding with the for each and this thing. Oops, something gone wrong. Yes, since this is not a product here, the thing what you have to remember is you have to extract the data. So I simply say $data dot, because it's going to be referred as data, so I say $data dot. Let me just try to re-execute this. We got this particular information what we have. Okay, and this is going to be a list item. Okay, you have already two list items. Now let me just try to add a new item, mobile, and I just try to provide the price. I click on add product. Now I can just try to observe it. The time and the date for the first and second product is not getting updated. Only this has got updated. I again provide one more value. I click on update. You can just try to observe it. This is just rendering only this information. Whatever the rendered information, it is trying to get the same thing. So we can just try to understand that the performance is going to be super fast. Now, once we have an idea on this, assume that if I just wanted to remove a particular item, then let's try to check out how do we do this. So what I tried to do was, after the label, I tried to add a button, and I just say data bind equal to, I bind it to a click event which I say remove. I just call it as remove. So whenever the user is going to click on the remove button, it raises a behavior called as remove here. Now let me just try to update my constructor, so that, because this is available within this, so let me try to update this thing. So I simply say remove. What is the behavior that I wanted to have is a simple function which is going to remove this particular current object from my view model. Products dot remove of this. So this is going to remove that particular product from this thing. Now let me just try to execute this. So we have a list of items. I say mobile, some 7500. I just give it, I click on add. If I say remove, the product gets removed. If I want, I can just add any number of products, and we can just handle this thing. So we can just try to observe it. It updates only the latest information. But assume that I don't want to allow the user to add so many products and all. Then what we can do is, we can even update the behaviors to be enabled or disabled, which was to be very complex long back. But with the support of Knockout and its binding methodology, it will be quite simple. So how do we do that? Means, for example, let me just try to update this thing. For our understanding, I say label total, I say span data bind equal to text, whatever the products we have, I say dot length. This is going to give me the list of the length of the products that is there. Quite a simple thing we just have. I close it like this. I don't need a span tag here. So this is going to tell us how many products we have added. And my requirement is, whenever the user is going to add more than 5 products, I should not enable this button. So what I try to do was, for the add button, after the click event, I say enable colon products. I say length is going to be lesser than 5. Once I updated this information, let me try to execute. So let me just try to, now we can see that there are 2 products available. Let me have 5, and once I added 5 products, you can see that the product button got disabled. Once I remove any particular thing, again you can able to view it. Once it reaches to 5, it gets removed. Hope now you have a clear idea on the knockout and how the observables are used. Now let us try to understand how to build the single page applications.